Okay, so what we're going to do more of is what we just got done doing last time is if we were told to put cosine or tangent of x in terms of cosine of x. Now, put tangent in terms of cosine is a little bit more difficult, okay? Because do tangent and cosine have a Pythagorean triple? No. What's a Pythagorean triple with tangent? Cosecant. Now, does cosine and secant have anything to do in common? Yes. The secant is a reciprocal of cosine. So you would write tangent squared of x plus 1 equals secant squared of x. Now, what can we do to both sides? Subtract 1. So tangent squared of x equals secant squared of x minus 1. Now, how can I change secant into cosine? 1 over cosine squared of x minus 1. Now, what I need to do for this one is to get a common denominator so there's just one fraction. So what's 1 the same as if I on a common denominator? Cosine squared of x over cosine squared of x. So I get 1 minus cosine squared of x over cosine squared of x. And then, how do I get tangent alone? Take the square root. So if I take the square root, the tangent of x equals positive or negative the square root of 1 minus cosine squared of x all over cosine of x. Why can't I just write plain simple cosine on the bottom? Because it's all alone squared. So if you take the square root of it, it's all alone as just cosine. The top, since there's addition and subtraction, I can't just take the square root of 1 and the square root of cosine squared to get like 1 minus cosine. It just has to stay in the square root. So, solving for a function. Can you do that? Should we do one more? Okay. Let's put cosecant in terms of tangent. Let's put cosecant in terms of tangent. So I know that cosecant squared of x equals cotangent squared of x plus 1. Is there an easy way to turn tangent into cotangent, cotangent into tangent? Yes. By taking 1 over tangent squared of x plus 1. Okay? So cosecant squared of x equals 1 over tangent squared of x plus tangent squared of x over tangent squared of x. So cosecant squared of x equals 1 plus tangent squared of x over tangent squared of x. Then what do I do with both sides? I hear whispering of square root. Yes, you take the square root. So cosecant of x equals the square root plus or minus the square root of 1 plus tangent squared of x over tangent of x. Oops. Just the square root needs to be on the top is all. Okay? So you'll have 4 problems like that to do. And then what you'll do is you'll be given stuff like this. If the tangent of x equals 3/4 in quadrant 1, what is the sine of x, cosine of x, cosecant of x, secant of x, cotangent of x. All right. What's the easiest one to find out on this whole list? Cotangent. Thank you, Abby Palmquist. Because how are tangent and cotangent related? They're what of each other? Reciprocals. What's the reciprocal of 3/4? 4/3. Okay? Then, if I wanted to, I could go right up here and look at cosecant in terms of cotangent, or cosecant in terms of tangent. And I can get cosecant by just plugging 3/4 into this function if I wanted to. Or what I can do is I can say, well, I know tangent squared of x plus 1 equals secant squared of x, correct? So just take 3/4 squared plus 1, which is 9/16, plus 1 is how many sixteenths? 16 sixteenths makes 25 sixteenths. And take the square root of each side. What's the square root of 25 sixteenths? 5/4. So the secant of x is 5/4. Okay? Any relationship between secant and any of the ones above it? Yes. Cosine is what? 4/5, because secant and cosine are reciprocal functions of each other. Okay? How are sine and cosine related? Sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals what? 1. So sine squared of x equal or plus 4/5 squared equals 1. What's 4/5 squared? 16/25 equals 1. Subtract 16/25 from each side. Sine squared of x equals 25/25 minus 16/25 is 9/25. And you take the square root of each side. So sine of x equals 3/5. How are sine and cosecant related? They're reciprocal, so this is 5/3. When you're in quadrant 1, everything is positive. When you're in quadrant 2, cosine, because we're going left on the x-axis, cosine is negative. Sine, because we're going up, is positive. Tangent is sine over cosine. Positive over negative is a negative. And then their reciprocals are like signs. In the third quadrant, cosine is negative, sine is negative, and when you put sine over cosine, negative divided by negative is a positive. Tangent is a positive. In the fourth quadrant, cosine is finally positive because we're going to the right. Sine is negative because we're going down. And tangent is positive divided by a negative, or a negative divided by a positive, which is a negative. So know the signs of your functions in each quadrant. Make sure you know the signs and match them up appropriately. We're going to do one more that these were nice numbers. You're not always going to get nice numbers. Sometimes you're going to get ugly numbers. Okay, so let's say the cosecant of x in quadrant 3 equals negative 9/4. Okay, what are all the other functions? Well, you got sine of x, cosine of x, tangent of x, secant of x, and cotangent of x. What's the easiest one to find on this list when you're given cosecant of x equals negative 9/4? Sine of x equals negative 4/9. Then what's easy to find once you find sine? Cosine. Sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. So sine squared of x, negative 4/9 squared plus cosine squared equals 1. What's 4/9 squared? 16/81 plus cosine squared of x equals 1. Subtract 16/81 from each side. And if you subtract that, you get cosine squared of x equals 65/81. Take the square root, you get the square root of 65 over 9. Positive or negative? Negative, because we're in the third quadrant. Tangent of x. What is the tangent of x? Sine of x over cosine of x. So it's negative 4/9 over negative 65, negative square root of 65 over 9. What will you do with the two denominators? Multiply them by 9, because that's the denominator, they cancel out. So you give a negative 4 over negative square root of 65. Can't leave square roots on the bottom, so multiply by negative square root of 65 on the top and bottom. So you get negative times a negative is a positive 4 square root of 65 over 65. Now if we backtrack a step, you had negative 4 or positive 4 over square root of 65. Okay? Now, the reciprocal of that is cotangent, which is square root of 65 over 4. The last one to find is secant. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So secant is 9 over negative square root of 65. So if you multiply top and bottom by square root of 65, the square root of 65, not 6 square root of 5. Then you get negative 9 square root of 65 over 65. So some of these get kind of crazy looking, but that's the basics of what you're doing today. Can you handle that? So on page number 165, we're doing 19 through 26, all of them. 8 problems.